Hey there everyone, it's David here and welcome to the Shed Insider. Hey, sorry about the delay between the videos, bit of a big week, changed jobs, had to restart the whole video process all over again with a new location, which you'll notice from the background here. So let's move on. The subject for this week's video is the biggest double garage mistakes that I see when I have customers coming to me wanting to buy a double garage kit or a build, whichever. These are the top, what have I got here? 7 mistakes that I see people talking about. So I'm going to be referring to notes over there. So if you don't mind me looking down there, sorry about that, but I can't remember all of these, although they are pretty memorable, most of them. So look, when people call me about a double garage, most people just go, oh yeah mate, just a double garage, nothing need to be anything huge, 6x6, you know, something like that. That's generally the brief I get when I'm building a double garage. That usually ends up being 6 metres wide, 6 metres deep, 2.7 metres high with either a 10 or a 15 degree pitch. So pretty bog standard garden variety double garage. However, there's a couple of things wrong with building a double garage like that. Well, not a couple, 7, at least 7, but let's go through the top 7. So let's go from number 1. Number 1 is not allowing space for opening doors and storage. So basically, when you put a 6x6 shed together, you don't leave enough space for both cars to have both doors open. So if you're going to be spending a lot of time working on cars, cleaning cars, fixing cars, taking things in and out of them, kids, you know, with car seats, dogs jumping in and out, that sort of stuff, you need space to open the doors on both sides. 6x6 garage doesn't do that in terms of width, and in terms of length it certainly doesn't do that because it allows absolutely no space for storage. So unless all you want to do is stick a car in there and be able to open only one door on one side of the car just, and not store anything else in there, and for God's sake don't put a bull bar or a tow bar in your car because you won't be able to fit it in there at all, that's all you're going to get with a 6x6 garage. So that's mistake number 1. Number 2, the doors aren't wide enough for you to drive through with your car or your trailer or your boat or your camper. So here's an idea. A Ford Ranger is 2.2 metres wide, right, including the mirrors. So you do drive through with the mirrors on. And the average door on a 6 metre wide garage is 2.55 metres wide. That leaves you 175 millimetres between the wing mirrors and the door track. That's about much. So you got to be really accurate driving in and out of a garage to make sure that you don't bang anything into it. And if you've got a boat that you're trying to put in there, it gets even worse because a boat can be up to 2.5 metres wide. So 2.5 less 2.55 leaves about 25 centimetres either side. So yeah, about, you know, 8 inches. Maybe fine if you're backing in a car. I'm not so keen on it myself, but try to back a trailer in dead straight with, you know, that much space either side of it. Yeah, not a real big fan of that either. So make sure you leave enough width for a length for a bit of storage at each end, and make sure that you leave enough room for the doors being wide enough to get your actual thing that you're trying to put in the garage through the door. Number 3. The garage isn't long enough for tow bar and bull bar accessories. I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. So again, let's say you drive a Ford Ranger or a Toyota Hilux and you add a bull bar and a tow bar. That's going to add somewhere between 200 and 300 millimetres and sometimes up to 400 millimetres depending on whatever you get. If you've got a winch compatible bar and maybe an extra long Stinger tow bar, then you can be talking 400 millimetres extra in your car. So your truck's already going to be, what have I got over there, 5.35 to 5.75 long, depending on whether it's a Ranger or a Hilux. So that's going to take you up to about 5.6 to 5.7 and a half, leaving you 175 millimetres at each end. So again, not a huge amount of space to be walking around the vehicle if you do want to actually, you know, clean it inside, dust it, blow it off with a blower, any of those sort of things, or even, God help you, if you want to store something in there, because that's not going to happen. So number 4. Don't forget that modern portal frame sheds have the roller door set in from the end by about 150 millimetres, so about 6 inches, you know, the depth of your slab plus half, plus the 35 millimetre thickness of the door ribs, because your door's made of ribs like that. So that's coming off the total length of your shed. So that brings your shed depth down to 5.8 metres, or maybe a little bit less. So you know how we were saying that you had 5.65 to 5.75 with your garage, with your Ranger or your Hilux with a tow bar and a bull bar. Well, now you're down to about that much of each end. So that's really cutting it fine in terms of getting it in and out of the garage. So that's number 4. Make sure you make your shed long enough to take into account that extra, 150 millimeters of portal frame that they're going to use. And it can be bigger. I mean, if you've got a shed that's bigger, that portal frame can be 200 millimeters, which means your roller door is going to be set back 200 millimeters from the outermost point of the slab. So that's taking old school 8 inches off the size of your shed. So, all right, number 5, looking back down on my list again, doors not tall enough for your vehicle. Now, first thing I always ask customers when they're building a garage, a double garage, or any garage really, is do you own a Land Cruiser with a 6-inch lift and a rooftop tent? Now, it always gets a laugh, but it goes to demonstrate that a car is not a car, and what suits a Yaris isn't going to work for a Land Cruiser or a tricked up off-road beast. So, and look, keep in mind, a domestic garage door in a new house, I've seen them at about 2 meters and 50. They can be a little bit taller, 2.1, maybe 2.2, but I mean that means that your house eaves are going to be up around 2.7, 2.8 to fit that roller door in there. So 2.1 is 2.050 is most standard domestic roller door, lifter doors, panel lift doors. They're all about the same height. So like my Everest with a roof rack, and I've got no lift on it, it won't fit under a 2050 millimeter high door. So just keep in mind, any door that's up to 3.1 meters high, 3100 millimeters, doesn't add that much to the cost of a shed. Once you get to over 3100 millimeters, you need a chain drive, and the price can shoot up by about $1,000 a door. So they do get a bit exy once you get up there, but you've got to fit the car in, you've got to fit the car in. So 3.1 meters, that's a decent sized door. I don't think I've seen a car that's, as tall as that. Certainly if you're putting in a caravan, an off-road van, anything that isn't a pop top, anything with an air conditioner on the roof, you're probably going to need a chain drive door, and it's probably going to need to be, 3.1 to 3.5 meters high. So keep that in mind. Don't go with short doors, because if it ain't going to fit in the garage, it ain't going to be much use to you once you get it built. So number 6, not adding insulation. So unless your shed is only for storage, insulation is a must to make the shed usable in summer, especially in Queensland. It's really expensive to add it afterwards, because the roof's got to come off, then the insulation goes on, then the roof comes back on, and your builder is going to bitch and moan like a stuck pig, because he's got to match every single hole for every single screw that he put on before when he puts the roof back on, and that's really hard to do. So whatever you add onto your shed in terms of insulation, do it before you build the shed, because it's going to save you an absolute stack of money, and it's going to bring the temperature down by about 5 to 8 degrees in summer. If you're in Queensland, just don't build a shed without insulation. That's my best rule. Number 7 is probably a bit of a bonus one. It's not really something about a shed, but don't get your slab poured without engineering from the manufacturer. A portal frame shed these days does not just need a 100 millimeter slab. Some manufacturers will engineer a 200 millimeter edge beam around the outside. Some will engineer pads and piers that are up to 600 millimeters deep wherever there's a portal frame. Others might just use a 400 by 400 millimeter square pad. But a 100 millimeter slab ain't going to cut it, and you're going to find that your shed might be lifting off in the wind or cracking, especially if you live around some of the southeast Queensland areas where the soil is not as good as it could be. So just make sure you get the engineering from the manufacturer of the shed to pour the slab for the shed, because that way they're matched together. It means that you can get final inspection done on your shed, and it will pass council, which means in turn, once it passes council, you can get it insured, which means that not only is the shed covered for your insurance, but the things that are in the shed are covered for the insurance. If your shed's not final approved by council, it's probably not going to pass muster with the insurance company, which means that if your shed collapses, damages your car, you're not only up for a $20,000 shed, but you're probably up for a new car, which isn't covered by insurance either. Look, one final thing, bonus number 8. If I was building a double garage right now, I'd be looking at least a 7 metre by 7 metre, maybe even 7.5 by 7.5. That gives you enough to open all the doors on the cars, both sides, leaves you enough room at the end to put stuff in storage. I'd probably be going for a 3 to 3.5 metre gutter line, which means I get a bit more height above the vehicles. So if you do decide you want to put a hoist in or some ramps in for servicing your car, those are certainly going to be doable with a 3 to 3.5 metre gutter height. Now, what's the difference between a 6 by 6 metre shed and a 7 by 7 metre shed in terms of the fully built price? Look, I've seen 6 by 6 metre sheds from places like Titan. They'll sell you a gold star for probably used to be sub $20,000 by a considerable amount. Now it's probably around about $20,000, fully approved, fully built, fully kit supplied, councils, everything like that, around the $20,000. A proper portal frame shed, not a gold star frame shed, you're probably looking at around 22 to 23. Bring it up to a 7.5 by 7.5 or a 7 by 7, you're probably adding about $4,000, $5,000 maybe once you're insulating it. But it's going to make it such a better shed to use, such a better garage. You'll be able to fit everything in, you'll be able to open the doors, there's plenty of room for storage, you've got a bit more head height. Another thing about having head height is not only if it's insulated, it's cooler, but having the roof further away from your head means that the hot air's got to come a lot further down the shed before it gets to you. So if you're working in there doing woodwork in the garage like I do, having a shed that's not only insulated but has a good 1.5 meters above my head is a great tip. And go for a 15 degree pitch roof. 10 degrees is okay, but again, 15 degrees gives you just that little bit more height in the middle, unless you're limited by the overall apex height by the council. I'd be going with a 15 metre pitch, not a 10 degree pitch, just so that you've got that bit of extra height. If you decide you want to store stuff up in there, you can certainly do that. So anyway, there's your top 7.5 tips for building a double garage. Hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll catch up with you next week, and next week's video will be on time, I promise. Well, maybe. All right, have a good day. This is the Shed Insider signing out, and I will talk to you soon.